Hey, great to have you here. Look, last week I did an episode. It was called Bureaucracy. And then when I uploaded it into this podcast feed, I was just like, no. And I changed the C and substituted it for a Z and called it Bureaucrazy. Bureaucrazy. That's difficult to say, just because that word better reflected how I felt about what had happened. If you hadn't tuned into that episode, I was trying to just do some paperwork around my car. It was basically it was close to nearly impossible. I was waiting a lot of time at the Department of Transport to get it done. A couple of days later, I went back to the Department of Transport and I went there really early. I got in and the guy's like, "What are you here to do?" And then he's like, "Oh, have you got a roadworthy certificate for it?" I'm like, "No, because I'm just switching it to myself. I don't need a roadworthy." So that was the next step. So I could try to be more efficient. I booked in a service and an additional roadworthy certificate. That's happening. I still haven't closed the loop on this, but I thought it was a fun time just to share a couple of responses I received from your fellow listeners about this podcast. One was actually from my friend Steph Clark. She was the one I was going to send a voice note about this incident. And I was like, look, I was going to send this to you, but now it's inspired a podcast episode. Here's what happened. And she responded. And what I love about her response is that it's I've cut out her bit about it commiserating, but I wanted to share this example from Steph because she highlights something that Australia Post in New South Wales is doing, which I think is fantastic. So I'll play this from Steph.
It's the worst. Funnily enough, with some of the work I was doing this morning, I was pulling out a load of signals and stuff for this workshop I'm running next week for a client. And one of the ones it was one of my favourite ones from a couple of years ago. The post office in Orange, New South Wales, has just had at that point, they just had this massive refurb to kind of make it into a hub for e-commerce more generally. So they installed changing rooms so that, and because this is obviously a more regional area, so that if you've had to drive to the post office to pick up your parcel, you don't want to have to drive it home, try on the thing, realize it doesn't fit, drive it back to the post office and then send it back. So the post office put changing rooms in so you could try your new fit on immediately and then organize the return there and then if you didn't like it or didn't fit or whatever and you need to send it back.
Cool. Thanks so much, Steph. I love that idea, making it more accessible for people, making it friendlier. And you're right, it takes that friction away. So it actually ultimately helps the retailer as well, which is fantastic. I also had a voice note from Steve Harvey, again with his commiserations and sharing his approach because he comes in from a safety perspective. Let's play Steve's voice note.
Hellian, Bureaucrazy, what a podcast name that is, because you're absolutely bang on. There is some absolutely crazy things that we do in the name of work and safety that add zero value. They're just there as a safety comfort blanket, so to speak. I've been involved in decluttering programs in organizations, and I use a little model called the 3 C's. Contribution, confidence, and consensus. Now, when we talk about contribution, we actually want to know how much value does this document or system or process adds. When we talk about confidence, we want to know, how do we know it will add value? How do we know it's going to work? How do we know that it's an important piece of the process that we're doing? And then the consensus, does everyone agree? Can we take this document away, or is it something that we really need to keep hold of? Just, let's say, great podcast. I really loved the name, and I just thought I would share a little process that I go through when I start thinking about systems, processes, and documents, particularly documents. Talk soon. Take care.
Right. Awesome. I really like that. The contribution, confidence, and consensus. I think what is interesting about consensus, I find, is that actually a lot of people within the system agree that they shouldn't be doing this thing, but no one actually surfaces that. So the fact that you even bring it up for discussion, you actually realize there's a lot of people that want things to be more efficient as well. Sometimes I think the difficulty is picking your battles and how much energy do you invest into something. And I think that's also a challenge. When we're trying to do work and business as usual, it's how often do we need to raise up and challenge some things? And it's obviously easy when you're a solopreneur. You can just make a decision and decide to cut things. When you're part of a big system, is having to get that consensus. And so sometimes you've got to put that energy, effort, even getting people together, getting alignment, that's another thing. And sometimes do you just decide that, hey, I've decided that we're not going to do this anymore? And going in with that authoritative approach, sometimes I'm the person that loves getting consensus and loves getting people on board, but sometimes I think you got to just depending on your role within an organization, sometimes you're just going to take that lead and be like, we're not doing this anymore. So it was really nice to hear how you break that process down. I love getting your voice notes, by the way. I had lots of sort of text responses to this episode. It's kind of blown up just because of the phrasing, Bureaucrazy. I don't know. One day I'll be able to say that correctly. But if you want to send a voice note, you can just do that over any of the social media platforms. That's how I got these two onto the show. And hopefully this car thing gets sorted soon. Thanks so much for listening. I'll speak to you tomorrow.